Hello, I'm Dale Matthews on this Labor Day, and here's Mike.
Hey Dale, doing my best to not labor today.
Yes, is it Labor Day where
And
you are too, Mike?
yes, it is. Thankfully, Dale came to me with an idea for a show about nothing.
Yes,
And so we won't be doing much on the show tonight, I guess. Is that
yes.
right?
Mike always thinks he not always, but he often says, "But I don't know if I've got anything to say about that." Now you all watch. He says this, and I go, "Mike, come on! Have I ever been wrong? You've always got something intelligent to say about these
Boy,
things."
I'm going to try and prove Dale wrong tonight here.
Okay, so Labor Day. What is the role of unions in Josephine County government? Are they being used? Are they being abused? What is their role? Do they have a political role? Well, we already know that they have a political role. Mike, you recall some of the stuff that happened when a lot of city workers and county workers were the key people behind pushing for the last couple of levies, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course, and they're the drivers behind the shell organizations that drive these levy efforts. It really there's no such thing as a grassroots drive for a levy in Josephine County. It doesn't happen.
One of the reasons you know that the opposition to the levy was grassroots is that when the TV station said, "Well, who's in charge here?" There's nobody in
Yeah,
charge.
that's
It's
right.
a grassroots effort.
Yes, and
Well, what's that supposed to mean?
that's grassroots by definition. Well, I remember when I used to go to the SOS meetings in the beginning, and Archie would always say, "Well, I want somebody else to get up here and do all the talking and whatever. I'm just here until somebody else takes over." They never ever did. It was always him in charge there, and the core membership they're all government employees, and they run their campaign efforts out of union facilities. And so it's all tied together. They all have the same motivation: bring more money to government. That's good for us. In their minds, what's good for Josephine County is good for them. They don't care
See, I
about
told you,
what's
Mike has
happening out in
nothing
the
to
rest of
say
the
on this
county.
subject. Just he's going to just sit there like a post,
Well, no,
nothing
I
to
mean,
say.
you asked about political.
Mhm.
Is there a political connection to the unions? I don't think there is. Is there a union? Is there a private sector union operating inside Josephine County? I'm not sure that there is.
I well, there have to be for health workers. There have to be at the hospitals.
Oh, that could be. Yes, that could be.
Okay.
I suppose, and I suppose, let's say if Knife River is in town doing some sort of paving work or something, maybe they have some union people working for them. I have no idea. But generally speaking, I'd say there's a lot more probably public sector union people in this town than of any other stripe.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right. Well, see, that's what this show is about. Um, Mike says, I have no idea. Yes, he does have some idea, but a lot of people don't have any idea of the influence of unions in our area. Okay, well, at least we can tell you a little bit about it. And when Mike was saying earlier that they ran the some of the processes to push for the levy out of union facilities, well, you may or may not know that it was union phone banks
Yeah.
that they were
Well,
using.
right, and it's the same phone bank that they'd use to get out the vote for any particular Democrat politician who they happen to be pushing for, which is all of them. Um, Listen, it's very, very clear. People who know unions and people who understand politics understand that unions are a very large part of what drives the Democrat Party machine, because all of the money, I mean, there may be a couple of Republican candidates somewhere that get contributed to by some union, but we're talking, it wouldn't show up on a pie chart anywhere. This is, for the most part, their entire political objective is to get Democrats elected and keep them elected once they are. And so when you wonder, well, that was just a nice thing that the AFSCME did for SOS to let them use their phone bank. No. You don't understand. That's not how they do things. They don't just allow anybody. You have to go through their cheesecloth first. If you don't fit through the cheesecloth, you ain't using their phone bank for anything. And that means that your political objectives and theirs have to be exactly the same. If they're not, if it's off by 1 iota, you're out of there. No chance. But since AFSCME and SEIU probably were the drivers who set this whole grassroots effort up to begin with, it's really kind of a moot point.
Okay, so there are 4 unions that work with government workers in Josephine County. The American Federation of State Government, State, County, and Municipal Employees. That's AFSCME.
Yes.
There's the Service.
And if you ask me again, I'll tell you exactly the same thing.
Yes. There's the Service Employees International Union, SEIU.
Yeah, that's mostly like state employees are part of that.
Right. There's the Federation of Oregon Parole and Probation Officers, FOPO. And there's the Sheriff's Association. Those are the 4. So I hope you were paying attention, because there'll be a quiz at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So is it really important what it is that these unions do, and just how much power do they have besides throwing in some of their people and their efforts to pass things like a levy?
Well, my opinion when it comes to unions, that probably at some point in the past, unions had a valuable role in making sure that the robber barons weren't, mistreating, because they were the only game in town and they're the only employer, so they could kind of name their price and have their people. But now, it's a much more widespread thing. If you don't like what you're doing, you can get up and go to the next town if you want to and get another job. Some people may feel a little bit less self-reliant than I would about that, and they would say, well, they're the ones that are making sure that I get paid the prevailing wage or whatever. Maybe so. I don't think they really have a place in government, and that is because sooner or later you get into this situation where it's like negotiating with yourself, because the local government and the officials within local government are generally of one mind and similar to their union brothers, and even if they're not members of the union, because in many cases these unions drive campaign funding. And a lot of these elected officials like to get elected again, and then they may be getting some money from their local union, and that's how this whole thing works. And that should never, ever happen. We shouldn't. As a matter of fact, I'm in favor of union negotiations taking place in public, where everybody can see what's going on.
Well, we know that when Sandy Casanelli was a commissioner, she was vitally interested in this issue. And she had asked in public meetings, I'm not talking about the executive sessions, because those are private negotiations between, at that time, Steve Rich and the county commissioners, okay? But she had asked in public sessions, she said, I'd like to go to one of these union negotiations. I've never seen them. And the person that was in charge of those at the time was our chief financial officer, Rosemary Paget. And the answer that she got from Rosemary Paget and the other two commissioners was absolutely not. They're not going to let Sandy Casanelli, commissioner or not, even sit and not say a word over in the corner during a union negotiation. There was no way that they were going to let her be informed on this subject. How do you feel about that?
And listen, that proves my point. Listen, if they thought somehow that she would be valuable as a negotiator on their side, that they would allow her to be in these things, but they're not interested in negotiating with those people. They're all on the same side. They knew that she would be a burr under the saddle, so they didn't want her in there.
Even if she didn't say anything during those negotiations, she would talk about it when she got out. Yes. Probably. Or even if she was sworn to secrecy, she would know. Look, you can say anything that you like, just not around me, about Sandy Casanelli. Let's take the point of view of somebody. I hate that Sandy. I'm glad that they, hey, now wait a second. She was a sitting commissioner. If she was instructed not to say anything and just sit there quietly and not say anything afterwards, she would have done so. Now, how do you feel about the fact that there was a county commissioner that was elected by the people that was denied even the right to sit there and listen? Really? No matter what you think about an individual commissioner, I hate that Cheryl Walker or whatever. Really? You wouldn't let her sit in there?
Wait a minute. What right does one commissioner or two commissioners have to exclude another commissioner from county business?
If they decide as a board that they're not going to allow something, this is why this next election is so important. You need two.
You should be able to make any decision you want to, but that's not one of them.
I agree with you.
Listen, if one of the commissioners wants to sit in on anything, they should be allowed to do it.
I see. Two commissioners right now could decide, I never ever want to hear the voice of Mike Jones at another weekly business session. I don't want to hear it, even though he's never said anything scatological. He's never said anything, no death threats or anything, not in public. But if they just decide that's
private it, for that matter,
that's it. They can decide that. They could do that to me. They could do that to anybody. Now, is it fair? Is it proper? Is it according to state law?
Yeah, well,
does it matter?
I think
enforcing it. Go ahead. Sorry.
The political impact of something like that is probably what they're concerned with more than anything else.
But they would just do it, and so there's political impact, and after a couple of months, well, maybe they would relent. They don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? That's a problem. I think that. Now, see, listen, I'm of the mind that the union probably gets an increase every single time. And it's time to start cutting them back and saying, I'm sorry that you don't like that. That's what we're doing. And if we don't have that kind of control, why are we in a negotiation here? Because we do have that kind of control. So back the heck up.
Can we actually do it? Okay, so when Mike knows the answer to this one. When you sit down with people at any gathering to talk about politics, county, local politics now, what are the issues that always come up? All right, or if it's a candidates night or something, or some other kind of thing where they're talking about politics for one reason or another. Okay, what's the number one question or that comes up, number one thing that people want to talk about, number one of all of them, Mike?
Well, I don't really know. I think that depends on who you're talking to.
Well, in general, it's going to be
I would say, I would say that funding for law enforcement is probably number one, but listen, that's not with everybody. You have some goofballs in there wanting to talk about Agenda 21 or something like that.
That's certainly true. There's always, I'm talking about in general, another one right up near the top. Maybe it's a battle to see which one's going to be which. When are we going to try to pressure the federal government to honor their contract that, about the timber? Yes.
When? Well, never with this group.
Yeah. Well, I'm not asking you what the
do.
answer is, okay, because you're not paid for the answers, but that's
No.
another.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yes. So, could you, fax me that list of things that I'm paid for?
You already know all this
I
stuff.
want to know, and I'm only going to talk about those things from here on out.
No, that's not what I mean. The major issues. Okay, what are the major issues, if not the major answers? Because we've talked about the major answers also. Another one that's right up there would be, what are we going to do about the expenses that the county has? Where can we cut?
Yeah, where can we cut? And if you ask them, they'd say nowhere, because we're already cut to the bone. I remember I went in and I talked to who was the guy? Harold Haugen. He was the interim guy. He was appointed after Sandy was recalled. And I said, certainly you guys can cut somewhere. Oh no, it's cut to the bone. So this is the mentality of these guys going in, and they believe this wholeheartedly. I don't think there's a government operating on the planet probably that couldn't cut somewhere, because I don't believe that they have the capability of really being efficient. Listen, who amongst us has seen this show Bar Rescue? And there's 100 shows like this where a guy goes in and a hotel is failing and he works that place over, or goes in and rescues a restaurant that's got big problems. It all is the same theme, and you send an expert in, and he goes in and observes everything that's going on. And then he tells you where the dead weight is. And then he doesn't come in as an adversary to fire everybody. He says, listen, I'm going to give you the opportunity to get your bleep together. And, we're going to do this correct. And during that process, usually what happens is somebody that's married to the current situation as it is freaks out. And that's the guy you got to get rid of. So you get rid of that guy, you put a new system in place, you get these guys working like a well-oiled machine, and then you let it back go again. And listen, everybody knows that's what needs to be done with government. Everybody knows this. Some people hate that because they're inside of it, and they don't want anybody saying that. That's a bad, don't ever say that. That's wrong. Everything government does is right. As a matter of fact, if you question government, you're a moron. So
that's what our county clerk has said about us, about the people who question government.
So we all know that government needs this kind of working over, and that most of these people are working very, very little and making twice what we're making out in the private sector. Now, there are exceptions to that in everything. I'm sure there are people working for local government that are doing a bang-up job, and I salute you for that. But you also know that half of the people in your department are dead weight, and those people should go, and we should, have a streamlined operation. That's how things really ought to be, and I think that we have decided that we cannot have that. You're never going to be able to accomplish doing that. I'm not totally convinced of that. I think that if you had enough of a wave in a particular direction, that it would become very obvious even to people that want things as they are. And by the way, you guys are the real status quo people. You are the people who love the status quo and want the status quo to continue. You always talk about the status quo as being, some other condition that is happening out there. Oh, no, it's right here. You're it. And so if you don't do that, we're going to continue in this same situation forever, or until the whole thing, comes apart at the seams somehow. So,
I just hate it when I have to carry the whole show all by myself.
Yes. Well, I'd like to see this kind of thing happen, but I'm not greatly optimistic about it, just because, first of all, you have to have somebody driving the bus, and before people can get on it. And we don't really have this kind of thing going on here. I mean, we are trying to point out what is going on in local government, and we hope that people are paying attention, and that your vote is really all that's necessary. But you also have to have a couple of people that are good candidates. But I'll tell you what, you could even have stinkers. You could even take this current board and you could steer them where you wanted to go. If you showed up in force and said, listen, here's what we want you to do. Stop doing this, start doing this. And you got 500 people in the room, the standing room only, and the street is packed outside. What do you think they would do? They would spin to your will faster than you could imagine.
But because you're not going to do that, realistically speaking, yes, absolutely true. But because you're not, then the alternative is, one, to get some facts, which we're desperately trying to give you some facts. And even if it's not our opinion, we also give the videos to you and you can look at them, talk to your neighbors. And then the other thing is, you've got to vote. That's all. And the fact that the last few elections we've had to choose between stinker or stinker, that's not your fault. Oh, it's partly your fault. But those are the people that are running. So you need to find, in my personal opinion, a couple of fiscal conservatives, people who are just, every regular day, the kind of people who don't want to run, Mike. And you need to convince them to run. What you ought to do is get those 500 people. You only need to make this trip once. You get those 500 people together. You go over to Mike's house.
I don't want 500 people on that street.
And you're standing trouble. You're standing out in the streets. Mike, you've got to run. And then yes. Mike, you'll spin him around. What was it they said? You're going to spin him around, and you can put a hood over his head and spin him around. And when he finished puking, then you say, Mike, I got a mallet here in my hand. You're going to run or not run? I'm ready. Whatever you say, Mike.
Yes. I don't know if it would exactly, those two things are analogous, actually.
Of course he doesn't think that. Okay. All right. I had experience with unions when I first got out of school. I went to school to study television production and management, and I got top grades. I got recommendation letters from anybody at the university that would, absolutely. I couldn't get a job to save my life in that area because the union folks said, you're young, you do have experience, because I had been directing and there at the school, but I'd also been pushing a camera around working since I was 14 in television. Okay, sometimes it was pushing a camera and sometimes pushing a broom, but yes, I'd even had the work experience. They didn't want to hire me, not because they knew me. If they knew me, they definitely would have not hired me. But no, the reason behind that is that they told me, they said, we've got enough. We can't find work for 40-year-olds. So we're sure as heck not going to be turning it over to someone who's 19. This is just not going to be happening, or 20, right, or 21, or 30, or 32. This is not going to happen. We want work for our 40-year-olds. So I had to move out of San Francisco. I couldn't stay there. There was no work for me because of the unions. I understand the value of unions. Thank you very much. I do understand that. But my experience with them hasn't completely soured me on the whole idea, but it's not been helpful to me.
Yeah. I was a union electrician for a while, and a Teamster, as a matter of fact.
Oh, not IBEW?
No. And this was an odd situation because we did electrical work on billboards, and I was a part of the bill posters union, which was Teamsters at that particular time. So, but I was an electrician, and I took care of the lights on the billboards and stuff. But I got enough. Listen, here's my objection to I didn't like them because they protected the laziest guy in the shop. The laziest guy in the shop, he had been there 20 years probably when I was there. This guy didn't do anything. Nothing. Like, he actually did nothing all day. He walked around and he shot the breeze with other people that were working at the place where he was supposed to be going out and doing what I did, fixing the lights, because every night we would get a list showing where the lights were off, because it was some guy, it was his job to drive around, look at all the billboards, look at all the bus shelters that we had advertising in, and make notes as to where the lights were out. And so I had, strangely enough, that guy trained me to work on some of the billboards, and that was the last time I ever saw him out in the field. Well, I would go out and start fixing these situations, and he got mad at me and said that I was making him look bad. He talked to the guy in charge in the shop, and I had only been there a few months, and I got shipped over to San Francisco and stuck in this one little area there because they didn't like what I was doing. And so
that sounds familiar to me.
Yeah. And another thing that I didn't like that they did all the time is every week they had some meeting there with the union, and they would draw all the labor people, all the bill posters, and whoever else was in that union in, and they would try to start up some issue between them and management. I was very happy. I was getting paid $21 an hour plus medical. I was happy. I was at $40-something thousand a year. That was totally fine with me at that time. This is 25 years ago. So I just thought, wow, certainly you could have something else to do besides being over here trying to stir up trouble and drive a wedge in the relationship between myself and my manager. That just seems goofy to me. And I thought, well, okay, so this is all added to my experience about unions. And, you get them inside a government operation where nobody cares where the money is coming from. There was, I think it's Milton Friedman who was talking about there are like 4 ways that people spend money. There's money that is your money that you spend on yourself. There's somebody else's money that you spend on yourself. There's somebody else's money that you spend on somebody else. And then I forget what the 4th one is or whatever. But as you get further away from you taking your own money and spending on yourself, you become freer with it and less care about the impact of spending that money.
Imagine what would happen if you had people in office that treated your money as if it was coming out of their own pockets, that were that tight. Is there anybody that's interested in running who would have that attitude, really have the attitude, and can't be bought off?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that also, even if you do hire somebody to go in there, I think you can only leave them in there for a certain amount of time, because there's just something about, I totally believe in term limits. I think, I don't think it matters who you send there. Listen, we have a whole, the Congress and Senate is full of people that've been 30 plus years.
Yes, but not just them. It's the staff also.
Oh yeah. It's the staff
there, no matter who comes in and goes out.
And then their staff, the ones that have cycled out, are now lobbyists that are working with them on the outside. So the whole thing is a racket. The whole thing needs to be just flushed and start over. It's too bad. But if you wonder why we're getting more of same all the time, that's the reason.
Well, here's another aspect of this that you may not know. Now, you may have thought, or if you even knew about it, that some of this was covered by the executive sessions that the county commissioners have with their legal counsel, and much of it is. But every once in a while, we see a glimmer of what's happening. How many times have you heard Simon Hare say, since I've been a commissioner 5 years ago, why, we've cut back on the number of employees we have? Well, that's in reverse now. You can see this. You've seen the videotapes, all right? So don't look so surprised, everybody. I can see some of you looking surprised. That's no good. All right. But he's always saying, well, it's gone down since. No, what happened was shortly before he got there. Doesn't like to be reminded of this. I did the other day in the hallway. That's when these cutbacks happened. Mm-hmm. These folks, there were so many of them. I'm going to try to get the numbers right. I'll try. Over 100 people were working in mental health. Really? Yes. And the county decided, since so much of that was coming out of the general fund, that perhaps what they should do is talk with Options of Oregon about they would take over this whole thing about portions of health and especially mental health, and that they would run this deal, and that these workers were no longer needed. Well, of course, the unions were pretty upset about this, one union in particular, and they said, what do you think you're doing? And they talked about it for years. I'm going to read to you just a little bit from a document so that you can understand what happened. So first of all, whenever you see, before I get off that, whenever you see the Commissioner Hare, oh, look at what I've done. You didn't do it, Simon. You had nothing to do with that. It happened before you got there. Stop lying to us or exaggerating or whatever that is. I think it's a lie. You can call it an exaggeration. You can call it a ham sandwich if you want. Okay, so you can find this information for yourself, and that's why I didn't write it down for myself. You can find this information by searching on Google, and all that you need to do is look up Josephine.
How do you spell that, Dale?
Yes, look up Josephine County unfair labor. And here's what you'll see, a big PDF document. And here's one part of it. This was in January or early February 2006. Jim Riddle was a commissioner. Jim Riddle was the guy that he was thrown out with, I believe, the lowest vote for an incumbent commissioner in the history of Josephine County. This is Jim Riddle and we've told you about Jim Riddle and lying on the radio, and Carl Wilson wasn't even interested in listening to it. He recorded the fact that he had lied about this, and the Courier and KJO were absolutely not interested even in hearing that this guy had lied, okay, which I think is ridiculous, but okay. So Human Resources Officer Kent Granite, Granat, Kent Granite, and local AFSCME president met, and that guy's name was Burtis. I think it was Ken Burtis. On February 2006, to finalize language for the new contract, and this would be eliminating all these employees. At one of their meetings, Burtis questioned Kent Granite about rumors that the county was planning to privatize some of its programs. Okay. Granite responded that he would deny their conversation. This is in a court document. If ever asked about it, and told Burtis that the Board of County Commissioners was supporting privatization. And if it were not for the strike that AFSCME was involved in, because they were saying, hey, what do you guys think you're doing? Well, they're going to try. They are going to try. If you're part of a union and you're one of those employees, you probably want your union to try.
Yeah.
If it were not for the strike, there would have been no discussion of privatization. He explained that due to financial considerations, it was unlikely that privatization would occur. Really? Well, it did occur. But here's where Kent Granite wasn't there much longer, because once the Labor Relations Board, Employee Relations Board, ERB, okay, once they found out about this, once this union guy went to them, and Kent Granite found it very difficult to deny, he tried, but nobody believed him, that the conversation took place, that was it. The county was in a bunch of trouble, because every union, if you're going to have a contract with the union, they have the right to threaten to strike or to strike. I mean, that's what they do, right? And maybe you don't want FOPO or sheriffs to be striking, I would think. And there's all kinds of problems with, with the guys that control the planes. What do they call those?
Yeah, the air traffic controllers. You're talking about back in the early 80s. Right. Reagan fired all of them because they went out on strike, and he said, you're out of there.
Yes. So maybe you don't want that happening, and I understand that. But these guys had the right to negotiate, and they had the right to strike. And Kent Granite, who was the Human Resources Director, sounds familiar, right?
That sounds like a news anchor's name. And now tonight,
Kent Granite. In the news from
Yes.
the Sunny Valley, here's news about yeah, right.
Yes.
Sunny Valley, where they're looking for gravel. Anyway,
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
so Kent Granite. So since he told them, what a lunkhead, really. I mean, yes, of course, this is going to be part of executive session because Steve Rich was going to get together with the commissioners and say, with the years. They got fined a bunch of money. Now, I don't know the exact amount, but I think it was dang close to $1 million. I think so. Now, somebody's going to, it wasn't dang close to $1 million. It was 970,000, whatever.
The point is they got nailed. They got fined. Well,
and it cost the county a bundle of money and a lot of embarrassment. Cost this guy his job. It made the unions look terrific. It made them look like victims. And what in the world?
And here are the pitfalls of dealing with the union is that, listen, they have an unlimited war chest. And they're going to use it against you if you come against them somehow.
Yeah, but in this case, they were right. Don't screw with them like that. I mean, if it's part of the deal that you have with them, and you've signed a contract, hello, federal government. If you signed a contract, federal government, don't go back on the contract and don't tell them that the reason that they're doing this is because they went out on strike. They have the right to go out on strike. Come on.
Yes. Listen, here's how the federal government gets out of that. Perhaps you feel you're been treated unfairly. I mean, that's how they do it. And if we all understand the reference there, that's Darth Vader. If you don't like the contract that you have with them, we could renegotiate if you like, I mean, that's and this is the unfortunate situation. Yes, exactly.
Well, so I urge you, the next time you see Simon and he says anything about cutting back on employees, Mike, you've seen the videos. Our viewers have seen the videos. What's happening right now with hiring people? Are they letting natural attrition take place?
Well, apparently not. They're hiring new people all the time. They seem to just love to do this sort of thing, and they'll make a solid case for it. I mean, really, it's very, very convincing. We need this person. We have to have this person. I think we should be attriting as many people as we possibly can to get down to some sort of a level where, listen, we need to be running a tight ship where we're all of a sudden we're starting to find little piles of money everywhere because we're saving so much money. That's what it's always in the budget
now. Anytime that he comes in, that the HR director comes in, he's the one that said, "You're always lying, Mr. Matthews." Oh, that's nice. Okay, so I'm sure there's a couple people believe that. Always lying. My name is Dale Matthews. That's a lie. Okay, so but when this guy comes in and asks for, let's hire some more people, the response is, well, let's really not tell everybody about the fact that we're hiring these. Why would you not want to tell everybody, Simon Hare?
Yeah, because they get criticized a little bit for this. And it's funny how the power of a little teeny bit of criticism will have them finding some way to sneak this in around where it can't be seen. Just think if a whole lot of people were looking at him and going, "Hey, what the heck are you doing?" Or actually had an expectation for them to do certain things. Do we have an expectation of these guys to do any particular things? I mean, the charter would be kind of a guideline to what we might be able to expect them to do. But so far, it's pretty clear that they're not interested in following the charter because, well, there's a whole list of annotations there that tell them how they don't have to do that. Thanks, Mr. Rich. But there are certain expectations. Listen, coming up here on Thursday night, this is a perfect example of what we're talking about here. This is the mineral, what do they call it?
Withdrawal.
Mineral withdrawal. This is funny because
we're suffering
withdrawal. Oh, well, you mean we are going to withdraw some minerals? No, we are going to withdraw you from withdrawing.
No, it's this kind of withdrawal.
Yes, right.
It's bad withdrawal.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to withdraw minerals because they're going to withdraw you from the land. That's what essentially what it is. So there has been some talk that the commissioners should be there and support the people of the county, and more specifically, the people who are mining and have claims right now. And listen, not that that's going to do any good, because this particular meeting is it's an administrative action that they're doing. So all they're doing is going through the motions to come here and listen to you gripe, and then they're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. But our commissioners should make a very solid and heartfelt case,
right,
for for the people of the county. I mean,
even if it's symbolic, symbolic, just to show us. Well, they are showing us what they think about us by not even wanting to do that, Mike.
Yeah. Well, we know for a fact that Cheryl is not for that at all. I happen to believe that Keith Heck and Simon Hare are going to show up and do this sort of thing because, number one, Simon Hare's in between a rock and a hard place.
Yes,
he's the liaison to the mining. What's the name of their thing?
Mining Advisory Board.
The Mining Advisory Board.
Committee. Yes.
Committee. He's the liaison to them. If he doesn't support them, I can imagine them going, "Hey, how about somebody else?" And then they also seem to have, it's as though Keith Heck is making friendly gestures towards them. This is the flavor that I'm getting. I don't know that that's going to be the case come Thursday, but hey, everybody should show up, and let's see if that's what happens or not. I would hope it does.
We can try. Hey, don't give up. I mean, don't. We got to hold them accountable, but then honestly now, sorry, you've got to be held accountable too, because there are certain things in our area where there's right and there's wrong. And even though it may not be your number one issue, you're not going to get any support from the commissioners unless there's certain things that you do. So all that we're asking truly is we're trying to make it not just make it as easy as possible, because that's the wrong attitude. We're trying to make it easier for you to slide into doing things to correct problems. It's not enough just to complain. You actually have to do something. And one of the things that we've asked you to do is to watch our show. It's not really a tragedy if you watch our show, not really. And talk to your neighbor a little bit. Tell your neighbor a little bit about what's happened. Hey, that's funniest thing happened the other day, and tell them about it. Okay. I'm not asking you to write a letter to the editor or get on KMED, and I'm not going to listen to KJO, and KMED, and you're not asking you to boycott certain. You're not going to be doing that either. Okay, except I don't think you should shop at Hagen, but that's my opinion. And the idea that they thought if they bought up 2 Albertsons and closed one of them, that would give them a competitive advantage had the opposite effect on me. Okay, so. But the thing is that there are certain things that you can do. One of them is you could pick and choose a meeting every once in a while and go to that and maybe say something, or at least stand in support of something. We can do that, right? Mike and I are going to be doing it anyway. We'll be there on Thursday with 2 cameras, and we'll be videotaping and we'll be showing it to you. So all that we're trying to do is be sure that you're an educated consumer, that you realize that it doesn't have to be this way. And as long as you know what's happening, which is the reason we told you the names of the unions, we told you about this case, with Kent Granite and what happened there, told you it cost the county a bunch of money. And as long as you are educated about this and you share it with one other person, there's some light at the end of that tunnel on Labor Day.